On episode 207 of the 40 Plus Fitness podcast, we talk to Dr. John Douillard and discuss his book, Eat Wheat, the scientific and clinically proven approach to safely bringing wheat and dairy back into your diet. The full show notes for this episode can be found at 40plusfitnesspodcast.com/207. Have you decided you're ready to make a change? To reclaim your health and fitness? The 40 Plus Fitness podcast is here for you. I'm your host, Alan Meisner. I'm an NSAM certified personal trainer with a specialization in corrective exercise and fitness nutrition. Let me be your coach as you find your way on your health and fitness journey. All right, let's go. Have you checked out the challenges? We're running 3 new challenges for February: the Sugar Challenge, the Squat Challenge, and the Burpee Challenge. You should check them out at 40plusfitnesspodcast.com/challenges. And here's a special tip just for podcast listeners. If you go to the Burpee Challenge and you want to do that one, I'm giving you a coupon so you can get it for free. The coupon code is the word podcast. So if you go to the Burpee Challenge and sign out, you go ahead and use the promo code podcast, you'll get that one for free. So just go to 40plusfitnesspodcast.com/challenges. Today's guest is a globally recognized leader in the field of natural health, Ayurveda, and sports medicine. He is the creator of LifeSpa.com, the leading Ayurvedic health and wellness resource on the net, with over 700 health and fitness articles and videos, providing ancient wisdom with modern science. He is the former director of player development and nutrition counselor for the New Jersey Nets. He has written 6 books and is a frequent guest on Dr. Oz and featured in Women's World magazine, Huffington Post, Yoga magazine, and dozens of other national publications. Our guest today is Dr. John Douillard. So Dr. Douillard, welcome to 40 Plus Fitness.
Thank you. Great to be here.
You know, when I'm looking for potential guests and whatnot, I'm looking for kind of opportunities to stretch myself, to learn new things. Sometimes I get a little bit of flack from listeners that'll say, you know, why did you have this person on? That's completely false, da, 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 da. And we can have that conversation, which is awesome. It's what I'm really trying to get is the conversation around why would this book be here? Why would this book matter? And obviously Eat Wheat in kind of a current environment where there seems to be kind of a backlash against wheat just was a really compelling title.
Yeah. We have a $16 billion a year gluten-free industry that we now are up against. And interestingly, that industry is promoting processed versions of gluten-free foods, which I hope we'll get into, that one of the components of the reason why we don't digest wheat and other hard digest foods well today is simply because of the processed foods that were the replacements of the cholesterol. When they took cholesterol out of a diet in 1960, they gave us all these processed foods and processed refined oils in our foods to extend shelf life. And it literally broke down our digestive system, predisposes to depression, obesity, diabetes, and broke our digestive system down. And we're still digging out of that today. And it was caused by processed foods. And now we have a $16 billion a year industry saying, hey, eat all this gluten-free food, which are highly processed, which is really giving us more of the exact same thing that caused this whole problem in the first place. It's just sort of crazy.
Yeah, it's interesting. I interviewed Jeff Scott Phillips not long ago about his book, Big Fat Food Fraud. And one of the things he kind of mentioned during that was when it's not a fad, but when someone picks on a particular thing, just one little thing, it's very easy for the food companies to then either take that thing out or put that thing in and suddenly start using that as their marketing ploy for the next round.
Yeah. And then what's interesting is that what most people don't know is that, in my book, Eat Wheat, there's over 600 scientific references suggesting that wheat in its whole grain form, which is how we're supposed to eat foods, not processed, actually has incredible health benefits. And many of the studies that are used to condemn wheat and gluten are in a highly processed form. So we're really, really taking the science and not looking at the whole picture, and have created an industry that is taking us further down the road into extreme diets and processed foods. And I have to say that I totally understand that people, when they eat wheat, they feel bad. I've been helping people reboot their digestion for 30 plus years. And I found years ago, people would come in with anxiety, fatigue, exhaustion, candida, Epstein-Barr, food intolerances. And we say, get off of wheat and dairy, they feel better for 6 weeks or a month or 2 or 3. And then we say, well, get off of meat and nuts and seeds and other highly allergenic foods. Then you can then become vegetarians, they become vegan, become raw foodists. We keep chasing the problem by taking foods out of the diet. And like we do so well in America, we just treat the symptoms and hopefully everything gets better, but it never really does. And what I try to do in Eat Wheat is, which I've been doing with my patients all these years, is help them reboot their digestive system, navigate around the highly processed foods and the digestive irritants, and then actually allow them to eat some of these foods that we have been eating, and I talk about in this book, not for 10,000 years like the experts like to tell you. It's actually your science who shows that they found gluten in the teeth of ancient humans 3.4 to 4 million years ago. So we've been eating gluten and wheat and barley for a very, very long time, and we've been only eating meat for 500,000 years, hunting our own meat for 500,000. We have 3.5 million years of eating wheat. So we have really, interestingly, way more genetics for wheat than we do meat. And the suggestion today is to be eating paleo, and the paleo version that's on the market today, which is not really what the Paleolithic people ate, is vegetables and meat, which is, and no grains at all, which we have actually millions of years more genetics to actually digest. So, and there's so much science behind that. And that's why I was so compelled to write the book, because, and also I hopefully get into it, but there's some dangers associated with us just taking a food out of our diet that we've been eating for millions and millions of years.
Yeah. And it's, there's like you said, there's kind of two sides to this conversation. One is, and I had this conversation with Cindy O'Meara not long ago. She did the documentary, What's with Wheat? And in her documentary, it was sort of like, perhaps if wheat was the way wheat was, then we wouldn't be having the problems we were having. And I think that's one side of the coin, or one side of the equation. But it's obviously much more complex than just that. We're also eating a lot more of it, and we've done a lot of other things to damage our gut. So, it's almost like a compounding of, you do this wrong, you do that wrong, you do that wrong, and it just kind of builds up over time.
Well, there's a couple of things that I try to highlight. Number one, like we talked about, the processed foods are really, killer, and mostly it's the cooked oils, the refined, bleached, deodorized oils that are in the bread that makes it stay on the shelf longer and stays nice and squishy. And that bread takes 2 hours to bake, and it'll stay squishy for a month. Real bread, organic wheat, water, salt, and maybe an organic starter will take about 3 days to make, and it'll get hard in a day or two. So one of the things that we know is that the processed foods are directly linked to a host of the concerns. Not just wheat processed foods, but all processed foods are increased risk of what's called metabolic syndrome, which is high blood pressure, high blood sugar, belly fat, high cholesterol, low good cholesterol, and high triglycerides by a whopping 141%. And in that same study, they gave people whole foods, including whole wheat, and the reduction of those symptoms was reduced by 38%. Study after study after study compares whole wheat to refined wheat, and they find that whole wheat reduces the risk of Alzheimer's in one study by 53%, reduces the risk of type 2 diabetes in study after study after study. And diabetes is the thing that Brain and other books, the Wheat Belly, they suggest that wheat has a high glycemic index, and therefore it acts like sugar, and sugar we know causes Alzheimer's, and therefore there's an association there. I did this big debate with David Perlmutter, author of Brain Grain, just recently. It's on my website now. It's a great debate where David and I went, back and forth, study after study after study, showing that, some of the science that is against wheat, I feel like is taking one piece of the gluten puzzle or the wheat puzzle, saying, yeah, wheat has a high glycemic index. Refined wheat has a high glycemic index and may act like sugar, but whole wheat actually has a very low glycemic index and lowers the risk of type 2 diabetes in study after study. But nobody tells you that. We just going to take these studies that say that are all about refined wheat, and now we said now everybody in the country thinks that wheat is a poison, and That is simply not true. And the grain brain concept is not just after wheat, but after all grains, nuts, seeds, legumes, anything that is harder to digest. And I don't want to keep rambling, but I want to tell you in a minute what some of the risks are of us going on and staying on a gluten-free diet.
Okay. Well, no, I actually think this is probably a great time to do that because, if we're going to get into, why
so there was a study
we might want to reincorporate this, but that absolutely, please do.
So here's the thing. There was a study that showed that when people eat a gluten-free diet, they have 4 times the amount of mercury in their blood than people who actually eat wheat. When people ate a gluten-free diet, they had significantly less good bacteria and more bad bacteria in their gut than people who ate wheat. When people who ate a gluten-free diet, they had significantly less killer T cells, a measure of your immune strength, than people who actually ate wheat, suggesting that these hard-to-digest foods, the wheats and the legumes that have lectins and anti-nutrients on them, act as immune stimulates to our intestinal tract. And when you take them out of the diet, sort of sterilize our food like we have sterilized our environment, bad things happen. 80% of your immunity is in your gut, and when you take out the stimulants for that, we have issues. The Amish kids have the lowest rates of asthma on the planet. The Hutterites, which are also a Mennonite group, they became modernized and sterilized everything, and they have the highest rates of asthma on the planet, yet they have the same genetics. They measured the dust in the Amish farms, and the kids are running around barefoot in the farms. They have cows as pets. And they measured the dust, and they found that the dust in the Amish foreign air were irritants and triggered an immune response in the respiratory tract to protect them against asthma. This is called the hygiene hypothesis, and it's very, very important for us to understand that we have millions of years of digesting grains and legumes. We have microbes in our mouth, esophagus, stomach, small and large intestines, specifically designed and engineered to make enzymes to break down the gluten and the gliadins in wheat. So when all that's working well, wheat is a very, very digestible protein. But when wheat is not digested well because of processed foods and pesticides and things like that, environmental pollutants, stress, then the gluten is not broken down completely. And it goes into the intestinal tract. And along with other intestinal irritants, it irritates the intestinal skin. And these molecules are too big to get into the bloodstream and feed us with protein. They get uptaken into the lymphatic collecting ducts. And your lymphatic system is a system that's very important, and it delivers energy to the body throughout the day. It's your baseline energy delivery system. So when you eat a meal of gluten and all that gluten is not broken down because your digestion is weak and not strong, that gluten will clog your lymphatic system, and your ability to deliver fats, triglycerides in particular, as energy is stopped in its tracks. So you feel tired, like a food coma. And then that lymphatic congestion, the body says, hey, I can't get this fat to deliver into the cell, so I'm just going to push all this fat into the fat around the belly for a while as a holding pattern until you open up the road again. And that will begin to start to congest your lymphatic system, and there's great science to back that up. So, and we can get into how your brain drains about 3 pounds of toxic chemicals and plaque out of your brain every year through very important lymphatic vessels. And if the lymph around your belly is congested and your brain lymph can't drain while you sleep at night, 3 pounds of chemicals every year, then that brain lymph congestion is directly linked now with the good science to suggest it's directly linked to anxiety, depression, cognitive decline, infection, inflammation, and autoimmune conditions, including brain fog. So when people think brain, we're really talking about a brain drain issue caused by weak digestion, the inability to break down hard to digest proteins in our stomach, all stemming from 60 years of processed foods and pesticides in our foods and environmental pollutants that we can navigate around and reboot the digestive system. And then, whether you sort of eat wheat or not isn't really the major issue here, although there's some science suggesting that taking all grains out of your diet, including wheat, may really be a bad idea. But the more important piece is that there's 400 billion pounds of toxic chemicals dumped in the American environment every single year. 62 million of them are cancer causing. If you can't digest wheat and you once were able, that means your digestive strength is weaker than it should be. Your ability to detoxify is weaker than it should be. And the mercury from the coal mine plumes that are on every single organic vegetable that you can't wash off, where does it go? You don't have the digestive strength to break it down and detoxify it. It goes into your liver, your blood, your fat, and your brain. And that is the cause, and that all happens via and through your lymphatic system, which is fixable, and you can detoxify it, you can reboot it. And that's what really Eat Wheat's about, is how to navigate around the processed food, navigate around the pesticides, and detoxify some of these toxic chemicals, and give you a troubleshooting plan to troubleshoot every single aspect of your digestive system so you can reboot your digestion / detoxification strength once again. And I think that taking wheat out of your diet and feeling better for a short period of time is giving us, in a way, a false sense of security. Everything's better. Well, no, it's really not, because you don't digest well, and you got to take the hard to digest food out of your diet. And that means you're really vulnerable to toxicity and pesticides and preservatives and parasites and things that can really take you out in an accumulative way down the road.
Okay, now, so you just hit on about 3 really big things that I don't know if we're going to have enough time to get through all of it, but so I'm going to bounce through a couple of them real quick, and then I really want to dive into kind of what I think is the more actionable side of this. And one is, I completely get that the reaction we have to food can in fact be beneficial. In fact, a lot of people will tell you, if you're going to eat kale, break it up or tear it, about 10 seconds, 10 minutes before you're going to eat it, so that it can let go of those enzymes that are actually going to be beneficial and make that kale more nutritious to us than it would have been otherwise. Because again, it's kind of that our body reacting against a food that's actually the health benefit we're getting from that kale. Otherwise, if you just eat the kale straight up and you chew it really well, maybe you're getting the same benefit, but they just tell you, just tear it up about 10 minutes before, and you're going to get the most nutrition out of that kale than you would any other way. So I get the food can be beneficial being slightly, what we call slightly toxic. But okay, and then the other side of this is, and I really appreciate the way you put this, was there is a connection between our gut and our brain. And that is part of that lymphatic system, how all that's kind of managing itself. So I totally get that. And we're going to get back into that in a minute. And what I do. The one I really want to kind of hit on is the other side of this, is what we can actually do about it, which is, if I notice when I quit a food, I feel better, that's not a signal that food is necessarily bad for me. That's just a signal that maybe I have another problem that's not allowing my digestive tract to do exactly what it should be doing with that food.
Hallelujah.
Okay. Did I wrap that all up in a little package?
Yes, thank you.
Okay. So I want to get to that piece, is how do I get my digestive tract in a condition? Because, it's almost now, you can put cart before the horse when you start talking about diagnosing, the symptom versus that. But I can't just start eating bread again just because I think it's healthy. I actually have to fix my digestive tract first. So what can I do to do that?
Well, the very first thing we have to realize is where it all starts. And it does start in your lymphatic system, but even before that, which I would think to give people the most traction in terms of feeling better, is their liver and their gallbladder. The processed fats that we talked about directly are linked to congestion of your liver and your gallbladder, and your bile becomes thick. Gallbladder surgeries today are the number one surgery in America. Liver disease and gallbladder issues are epidemic, and the bile becomes very thick and very viscous. And when the bile is thick and viscous, bile is like a Pac-Man that gobbles up toxins and chemicals in your liver. When you eat some fatty food, the Pac-Man bile goes into your intestinal tract and gobbles up fats and toxins and chemicals and mercury in your intestinal tract. But the bile also buffers the acid that your stomach makes to digest hard to digest things like wheat and dairy. And if you have congestion in your liver and the bile flow is compromised, you're not going to have the bile detoxifying your intestinal tract. That affects how well you go to the bathroom, but it also doesn't give you the buffers you need to buffer the acid in your stomach. And the stomach eats a whole bunch of wheat and says, okay, I need 4 ounces of bile to buffer all this acid because I got to use this acid to break up this wheat. And the bile never responds. And the stomach says, okay, well, I'll just hold on to everything, all the acid and the wheat and everything, until you guys give me the green light. And the green light never goes on. And the stomach just holds on to the acid, waiting, causing heartburn, indigestion. And eventually, over time, the stomach says, you know what? I don't know what you guys are doing down there, but I haven't seen any bile in a long time. So I'm just going to turn off the fire because I'm burning a hole through my stomach, causing an ulcer. So the body starts dialing down its ability to produce the acid. And what we do is say, well, here, take hydrochloric acid. That'll solve your problem. and take digestive enzymes, that'll solve your problem. Well, that's doing the job for you. Why not help the body do it itself by realizing the reason why the body stopped producing acid was because somebody told it to. If there's no bile to buffer the acid, and you dump all that acid into the intestinal tract, it'll burn a hole through your gut and kill you. So the body says, hey, who's producing all this acid? I told them to stop producing that years ago. Why don't we realize why that's happening? The liver and the gallbladder gets congested. People can't eat fatty food, fried food, greasy food. Not that we should, but the bile is a sack of bile, 15 to 20 times concentrated, enough bile to eat the brains of a woolly mammoth in one sitting. And we can't even eat a little fried food without having indigestion or nausea. You know what I'm saying? So not to say that those foods are good, but they are definitely indicators of your digestive strength. So the first thing I suggest to do is to reboot bile function, become a better fat burner again. And the inability to burn fat, which is linked to bile, is directly linked to obesity, your depression, because you need fats to stabilize your mood. Your liver, as you know, I'm sure, is the number one cause of liver congestion, is the number one cause of type 2 diabetes. It's not a pancreatic issue. Type 2 diabetes or prediabetes is a liver issue first. And then, of course, your liver and bile flow directly are the kingpins for the health of your digestion. So some actionable steps. My favorite bile movers to get the bile really moving in your body are beets. And bile make you poop too. No bile, no poop. So you want to go to the bathroom really well, get your bile moving. That's going to be with things like beets, apples, celery, artichokes are phenomenal. Fenugreek tea, fennel tea are phenomenal. So those are the things that I would use to increase your bile flow, which is beets, apples, celery, artichokes, fenugreek, and fennel. And then we have to once we get that moving, we're going to say, hey, let's turn the digestive fire back on naturally instead of saying, here's an enzyme, or here's a hydrochloric acid. Let's reboot the body. And there's science behind these 5 spices called ginger, cumin, coriander, fennel, and cardamom. That's ginger, cumin, coriander, fennel, and cardamom. And individually, there's really good science showing that these support digestive health. But when you put all 5 of these spices together, they do something really magical.
Besides taste delicious.
Yeah, right? They actually help your stomach make more of its own acid. They help your liver make more of its own bile. They help your body make more of its own pancreatic enzymes, so you don't need to take these enzymes to do the job for you. We're resetting the body's natural function so it can do it itself, and you become self-sufficient, not dependent on pills and powders. So those are 2. You can take those spices and you can cook with them. You can sprinkle on your food. We have a pill form of it you can get. There's many ways to get it, but they're pretty cool, actually.
Yeah, absolutely. And I use many of those all the time when I'm cooking. My wife travels from time to time, as I do. And when I'm here alone, I make a tremendous mess in the kitchen, but I do use most of those spices pretty regularly with my cooking. And they're just, like I said before, all of them are just quite delicious. Now, one of the things that you had in the book that I thought was interesting about wheat, and it's kind of a principle that I've been paying a little bit of more attention to lately, is more of the in-season thing. And wheat is also a seasonal product, and it would typically only be available towards the end, late summer, early fall, all the way through the fall. That's the season of wheat. And then it's only going to, if we didn't have refrigeration or processing as we do today, that wheat would only keep for a short period of time. So our ancestors probably only ate wheat for a very short period of time.
Very, very true. In fact, there's an enzyme in the body called amylase, which is specifically engineered to break down wheat and grain. And that enzyme actually increases in the human body in the fall and the winter and decreases in the spring and the summer, suggesting that we actually have enzymes that are circadian or cyclical that increase when for millions of years, the wheat was harvested, and we figured out a way to amp up our ability to break down that wheat. Interestingly, is that the soil has microbes in it that change from season to season to season. And in one study, deer who eat bark in the winter have microbes in their gut to break down the bark, and they have leaves in the summer, and they have microbes, different ones, to break down the leaves. But the study showed that if the deer were to eat bark in the summertime, they wouldn't have the right microbes, and it could cause such a level of indigestion, it could literally kill the deer. And I was like, wait a minute. deer die when they eat out of season, and we have like no clue about seasonal food and the microbes changing from season to season to season. I wrote a book years ago called The 3-Season Diet, all about eating with the seasons, but I was like so blown away by that study. I actually created grocery lists and recipes and a superfood list for every single month of the year that I give to people for free. It's called the 3-Season Diet Challenge. People can go to my website at lifespa.com and sign up for that for free. It's right on the homepage, and get in their inbox every month grocery lists, recipes, and a seasonal food list for everything they need for every month of the year, January, February, March, April, because I feel like it's so important for us to, like you just said, so eloquently, to reconnect ourselves back to these natural rhythms. The microbes in the soil change, those bugs become attached to the foods, and those foods, we eat them, they become our microbiome to change the rules, to give us immunity in the winter and break down bark or wheat in the winter if needed, to decongest us in the spring, dissipate heat in the summer. The subtle effect of the microbiome is something that we're just beginning to understand, and it's all tied to these beautiful, our connection to the circadian rhythms. And science tells us that human beings have very well disconnected themselves from the circadian rhythms of nature, and they're calling circadian medicine a system of medicine that will revolutionize medicine as we know it. And all that means is just getting back to the eating in sync with the cycles that we've been doing for millions of years until very recently.
Yeah, and I think more and more people are starting to recognize that. Right now it's easier to see on a 24-hour scale because you can pretty much manipulate that over a course of a couple of weeks and see the results. But doing it over a year or many years would be a little bit more difficult to prove out. But that deer study is really, really interesting. Now, deer are not cow, but cows do tend to move around and they tend to graze. And so a lot of animals are grazing animals. But your premise in the book is that humans are not.
No, never were. Humans have the ability to, it's a feast or famine thing. If we had to eat, 6 meals a day, we wouldn't be here as a species. We got here because we have an incredible ability to burn fat as a primary source of fuel. And fat is a long-lasting, non-emergency, handle stress like water for ducks back, sleep through the night, stabilize your mood and your blood sugar fuel. And we, as a culture, because of the processed foods and stress and certain things, have lost our ability to burn fat as a fuel, and that is linked to diabetes and obesity and depression-related issues. So when you eat a meal, when you graze, you eat a meal and a snack and a meal and a snack and a meal and a snack, and the body gets really used to eating and burning the meal and the snack and the meal and the snack. So we get very well conditioned to eating food every 2 to 3 hours. God forbid you want to go to bed for 8 hours, now I got to sleep 8 hours, and the body goes, wait a minute, I have a 2-hour feeding schedule. I need to get fed, and you wake up, and it causes issues with your sleep. If you want to be a better fat burner, trust me, we all do. You want to give the body a reason. So if you have breakfast and nothing until lunch, and lunch nothing until supper, and supper nothing until bed, in between those meals, you're going to burn your fat. If you have a meal and a snack and a meal and a snack, you're just going to burn the meal and the snack. So one of the things we really need to start to do is say, hey guys, let's stop snacking, start eating more quality meals 3 times a day, stop, relax, and enjoy those meals versus nibbling and gobbling all day long. Once in a while, that's not a big deal, but the kitchen needs to have a break. You turn the kitchen on, you cook the food, and then you give it a break. And during that break, the body delivers fat as a source of fuel. You have the meal, which is a surge of energy from the food, and you have fats delivered via your lymphatic system that keep you energized in between the meals. And if you keep clobbering them out with food, it deregulates or downregulates the ability for your lymphatic system to deliver the baseline energy. And slowly but surely, your lymph gets congested, which is linked to rashes and eczema and brain fog and tiredness and lethargy, allergies, sinus congestions, extra belly fat, swollen ankles, swollen feet, rings getting tight on your fingers, breast swelling when you menstruate, breaking out around your menstrual cycle. All these things are due to clogged drains, which are lymphatic drainage systems, which also carry your immune system, and they detoxify you. So when those drains get clogged, we're in trouble. And we have a liver that tries to bail us out, but even over time, that gets congested. And these are, the body's so amazing. Once you do a few things right to it, it all just gets better. And one of the side effects is you can actually eat hard to digest food again, in a non-processed form, of course, you can begin to break bread again and butter and not pay this huge price that most people do pay. And just like you said, it's just a symptom, a sign that something else is wrong. And let's not blame the wheat because the science really doesn't support that.
Okay. So now we're looking at this lymphatic system and I'm saying, okay, I want to start trying to support this system, because if I can get this system in line, I might be in a position where I go back and start eating good breads. And I want that for myself. So, because I miss bread. So what do I need to do?
Well, the lymphatic system, the really cool thing about the lymph is that we hear of all these antioxidant type foods and things. Well, the antioxidants actually, and there's good science to show that they actually work through and via the lymphatic system. So the best and most potent antioxidants are the things that are used historically as dyes, like berries and cherries and beets and cranberries and foods that will dye your skin. Not like vitamin A type carotenoids, which are also very good. They're not major lymphatic movers, but the dyes like berries and cherry kind of dyes that you have. And so anything that is red or black or blue, like a blueberry or a pomegranate, they are phenomenal lymphatic movers. So more of those in your diet. Leafy greens are great lymphatic movers. Fennel tea, a great lymphatic mover. Turmeric, another great lymphatic mover that we've heard a lot about. Turmeric, I'm a big fan of turmeric in its whole form, not the curcumin, because curcumin makes up 5% of the turmeric, and there's over 300 constituents in turmeric that you actually don't get when you just take curcumin. And in study after study after study, they show that turmeric outperforms the curcumin. So again, we do so well in America. We just take out the thing we think is the most powerful and concentrate it and give it to you and lead out the rest of nature. And I go, wait a minute, guys, have you seen the science to show that is actually quite, more potent in its whole natural form? And what Ayurvedic medicine, what they did, they said, if you take the turmeric and mix it with black pepper, 16 parts to 1 part black pepper, it increases the absorption by 2,000%. So they were all about like taking these whole herbs, mixing them and combining them in special ways to deliver the best, most efficient absorption and assimilation of that herb, so it can actually be delivered as a natural medicine to reset function as opposed to creating dependency. So again, we're looking at ways to use herbs as foods as opposed to herbs as medicine, because in that regard, we don't create dependencies. And that's really important to me, that I'm not giving my patients things that they're going to be stuck on for the rest of their life. Yeah, it was funny. I a few days ago, I made some chicken wings with turmeric and black pepper, and it took me 3 days to get the color off my fingers. But it was delicious and felt like I was doing the right thing for myself. So again, I can't thank you enough for being on the program. The book is Eat Wheat. And you introduced us to your website, which was lifespa.com.
Okay. And are there any other locations where you'd like me to send people or to get the book, to learn more about it, to learn more about you?
If they can learn more about the book at either lifespa.com or eatwheatbook.com, you can go there as well, eatwheatbook.com.
Okay. Again, this was outstanding. Thank you for giving us some really actionable tips today. If you want bread back in your diet, it's got to be the right bread, and you've got to do the things to fix yourself and get yourself right first. And it's in this book. So again, thank you, Doctor. I really appreciate you being on today.
Appreciate it. Thanks, Alan.
So on the last episode, I taught you how you can go ahead and share an episode. And I hope that you will, now that you know how to, on your iPhone, go ahead and share this episode as well. But there is one thing else I'd like for you to do for me. Would you go to iTunes and give us a rating and review? It really will help me make sure that I'm giving you the best content I can. Tell me what you like. Tell me what you want. Tell me what you don't like. Just give me a fair rating and review. It really does help me know what to do, and it helps other people find the podcast, because iTunes really likes the interactivity and really likes to know what you want to listen to and what you are listening to. So telling them what you think about this podcast is going to help others find it and know it's for them. So again, go to iTunes, leave us a rating and review. Thank you. Next time on the 40 Plus Fitness Podcast, we meet Pete Evans and discuss his book, The Complete Gut Health Cookbook. Until then, have a happy and healthy day.